Bulabinaka, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we are in the world. Bulabinaka from Fiji, Excellencies, the British High Commissioner to Fiji, and to some of the other Pacific Island countries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody to day 2 of the SIDS Virtual Roundtable and take this opportunity to thank the organizers for bringing us together. I do not need to remind anyone present that we are in uncertain times and that we are engaged in truly unprecedented discussions. We all live in this reality every day. The world is trying to navigate through the economic wreckage caused by COVID-19 and the resulting 150 million people who could be pushed into poverty very soon, in addition to those who are already suffering. Needless to say, we must move urgently from dialogue to action to produce solutions that will not just stem the losses, but will help vulnerable countries, especially SIDS, keep pace with an inclusive global recovery. It was only in last April, when the United Nations estimated that SIDS would require more than $5.5 billion to counter the immediate adverse economic effects of the pandemic. That was supposedly a worst-case scenario. 6 months later, that most dire projection pales in comparison to reality, pales to insignificance, I should say. Vital foreign income sectors such as tourism and remittances have taken a prolonged and devastating hit. SIDS financing needs are easily expected to grow by 3 to 5-fold over UN estimates as the decline in our GDP has exceeded anything we could have anticipated. But our needs do not exist in a vacuum. They come at a time of significant financial stress on the global north, which will have to invest an estimated $12 trillion in their economies to be able to withstand and eventually recover from the COVID-19 economic crisis. The difference is, however, SIDS do not have those resources. We are in survival mode, forced drastically to reduce fiscal expenditure on vital efforts to build our climate resilience, a serious compromise which will cost us lives, livelihoods, and development gains in the long term. The Global Development Finance Framework is based on architecture created in the 1940s, around the preference of the economic powerhouse of the Bretton Woods system. The leaders who crafted the system never contemplated the disproportionately high vulnerabilities of SIDS. That was simply not a concern for the developed world recovering from 2 devastating world wars and proceeded by a trend towards decolonization. Climate change was exposing those failings now again, and of course COVID-19 has forced a reckoning. It requires us to take our heads out of the post-World War era and out of the post-industrialized global world to face head-on the many contradicting limitations in the development finance framework, which of course was framed at a time when the world had not decolonized properly. We suffer under an outdated system with too many qualifying variables. It places huge demands on vulnerable nations with small governments and limited capacity, and it is actually punitive because of its rigid development categorization. SIDS do indeed share common vulnerabilities, but they vary markedly in their economic strength, their level of development, their political stability, and their ambitions. They demand a way to access development finance that is more realistic and more tailored to the individual situations than we have ever had. Traditional development indicators based on nominal per capita income will not cut it. The question that I hope will be posed during session 1 is whether current development indicators make any sense at all post-COVID-19. Any sensible economist would agree that income-based measures seldom reflect the true vulnerabilities of SIDS exposure to inherent risks and indeed limitations. For example, gross national income of SIDS is inflated by exogenous sources of income such as tourism and remittances, which have been all but wiped out by COVID-19, and the lockdowns. Combine this with a higher cost of service delivery in our countries, rebuilding after climatic events, and our governments end up spending more per capita than any other nation. That dynamic is entirely disregarded by the current development categorization of vulnerable countries. These vulnerabilities persist regardless of income category. That is why SIDS, as a bloc, need to access flexible concessional financing. In our case, for example, Winston wiped off 1/3 of the value of our GDP within 36 hours post-Winston. Last week, G20 finance ministers and central bank governors agreed to suspend debt service repayments for vulnerable countries through its debt suspension initiative until June 2021, and left open the possibility of extending the suspension by another 6 months if the current global situation remains largely unchanged. Fiji thanks the Global North for this immediate gesture, even though it is little more than a band-aid solution for mortal wounds whose adverse effect will be felt for years to come. Such debt servicing concessions come with debt cap covenants that limit a country's borrowing capacity and create a dichotomy between prudent and immediate COVID-19 economic response and a holistic long-term sustainable recovery. How are SIDS to adhere to such covenants while also trying to meet public demand for widespread economic stimulus, as major sources of foreign income, such as tourism and remittances, continue to stagnate in the midst of COVID-19? How do we cater for both our short-term needs and our longer-term development ambitions in an outdated 80-year-old development finance structure that refuses to yield to the realities of a changed global economy and indeed climate that demands innovative financial solutions? As recently and rightfully mentioned by the World Bank President, we cannot afford to kick the can down the road when longer-term solutions are needed now. But we'll never find those longer-term solutions looking through the lens of conventional development thinking. Development partners, including multilateral banks, development banks, and international financial institutions, cannot settle for old-school programmatic answers. New and additional development finance must come with a new approach, one that reduces the cost of accessing blended financing solutions. I'll give you an example. The Fijian government is pursuing a sustainable recovery through innovative financing solutions, one of which is blue bonds. And we're talking to the British government about this. But those bonds cannot materialize in a practical fashion unless ODA financing is channeled in more innovative ways, such as towards interest rate subsidies that lower the cost of the issuance of these bonds and rationalize holistic recovery efforts. Development institutions must stop using economies of scale as a roadblock against innovative solutions with huge transformative potential. We must embrace the notion of pilot first, which allows us to develop agile solutions tailored to SID circumstances before they are scaled and replicated through large-scale development finance. Don't parachute down one-size-fits-all approach. Give us the breathing room to innovate through country-driven solutions. We'll consider what works together and then build our scale among SIDS from there. The special circumstances and vulnerabilities of SIDS, such as climate exposure, underdeveloped finance markets, geographical isolation, limited economic diversification, and over-dependence on fossil fuel imports, must bring about greater flexibility in demarcating levels of development. This must be coupled with strong support for early replenishment and front-loading of IDA-19 to facilitate SIDS' return to a pre-COVID trajectory of growth and poverty reduction. Lastly, development finance must be targeted towards creating a COVID-19 vaccine that is treated as a global social good with no excuses for exclusivity or indeed shortages. Despite being relatively free of COVID-19 cases, SIDS must have access to vaccine-producing hubs ready to replicate a working vaccine to allow us to quickly jumpstart our economies. Anything else would run the risk of condemning SIDS to further vulnerabilities and stunted development. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, we have our work cut out for us, not just us here in the virtual room, but the entire international community. SIDS can be easily overlooked on a map, our voices easily shut out. That is precisely why we must make a concerted effort to adapt our development models to ensure that small island developing states are not condemned to make up for years of lost development opportunities and indeed economic growth. I thank once again the British government for organizing this, and I thank you for your participation and look forward to further input. Naka, thank you.